It was the first time I went on a road trip with my 3 sisters alone, no parents. My older sister Gracie was back from her freshman year of college. I had just graduated, and our younger sisters Megan and Summer were 16 and 14. We were driving down to Las Vegas, not to gamble or drink or anything, just shopping and dinner. Gracie got us a fancy hotel room on the Strip. I'm sure my parents were happy to have a quiet weekend without us. I'll admit we were acting like idiots on the drive. I guess we were all giddy to have Gracie home for the summer before she and I left for school. So we were singing along to the radio and making faces at the people who passed us on the highway, the kind of stuff our parents wouldn't have tolerated for 10 minutes before snapping at us. When we saw Vegas in front of us, it only got worse. Gracie was driving and I was in the passenger seat, Megan and Summer in the back practically bouncing off the walls. In a matter of minutes, we went from the mostly empty desert to being surrounded by cars going 70 miles an hour, minimum. Gracie got quieter, concentrating on driving, but the rest of us were worse than ever. That's when it happened. A pickup truck coming the opposite direction lost control and broke through the median. It was crazy to watch. The truck caught my eye when it began to swerve. I could see the driver fighting with the steering wheel as he first curved near traffic going the same direction and turned only to lose control and way overcompensate. As the truck broke through the barrier, both Gracie and I tensed our bodies. There were cars to our right preventing us from moving out of the way and cars behind us that would smash into us if we suddenly slammed on the brakes. I swear the truck was barely 2 feet away when it slid sideways and slammed into the barrier again. Gracie's side mirror got knocked flat against the side of the SUV, but otherwise we flew past without a scratch. After a second, Gracie asked, "Did you see that?" I was afraid to admit what I saw until she asked. The tone of her voice told me that she saw what I did. It looked like a giant invisible hand shoved that truck out of the way. Gracie nodded, her eyes completely locked on the road ahead of her. I tried to rationalize it in my head. I couldn't think of any reason a speeding, out-of-control pickup would suddenly slide sideways. The driver would have had to turn the wheel at a 90-degree angle. Maybe a tire exploded, knocking it in that direction. Or it was a miracle. God's hand reaching in to save 4 goofy sisters from a tragic accident. Megan and Summer asked about a million questions as we drove to the hotel and checked in. I wish Gracie and I had the answers. We still went on to have a fun weekend, but every so often Gracie and I would glance at each other to say, "Yeah, that really happened." It's been 20 years and I still get shivers down my spine whenever I think about it. Megan and Summer suggested another sister's trip to Vegas for Gracie's 40th birthday. No husbands, boyfriends, or kids, just the 4 of us. I volunteered to do the driving this time. Not that I don't trust Gracie. I would just feel better with my own hands on the wheel. The day my daughter was born is kind of a blur. My husband did an excellent job of executing our baby plan. We had everything ready to go and we didn't leave anything up to chance. Overall, I was in labor for about 8 hours. My doctor commented about how smoothly the birth went. A day later, they discharged me and our daughter to go home. My husband had already installed the baby seat in our car, so the nurses wheeled me out and waved goodbye once my daughter and I were secure. He drove us to the exit of the parking structure, but the gate wouldn't let us leave. The maternity nurses gave us a pass to cover our parking, but the machine wouldn't even read our ticket. My husband even got out of the car to deal with the machine, but nothing worked. Every time he scanned his parking ticket, the screen would flash, "Invalid, no exit." As we were getting more frustrated, I looked in the back seat at the baby, and she was turning blue. I didn't know what to do, I just screamed. My husband Rick glanced into the car and started freaking out too. Luckily, the exit gate wasn't far from the emergency room entrance. Rick grabbed the baby out of the car seat and ran for the ER. It took me a little longer to climb out and follow him. Before I even reached the door, nurses came out to take me inside where they had my daughter. Our little girl had had a seizure as we were driving out of the hospital, but we didn't notice. They readmitted her and kept her under observation for 2 days, but she didn't show any signs of long-term damage, which was almost not the case. Seconds could have made the difference. Our daughter could have suffered from brain damage or even died if we'd gotten any further away from the hospital before we noticed what was happening. She's a year old now and we still tell the story about how the hospital parking gate screwed up to protect her. Our little miracle. I was your average moody teenager in high school. None of my classes were particularly difficult for me, so I didn't spend much time doing homework or studying. Whatever I half listened to during class seemed to be enough for me to pass tests, so I had a habit of not going when I didn't feel like it. Most of the time, I didn't really do anything when I skipped school. I would wander around my hometown, listening to music. Mainly, I just wanted to be out of the house. My mom had been fighting cancer for what felt like forever. She had been in and out of the hospital dozens of times, but by the time I was in high school, she was sleeping in a hospital bed in our living room. And I guess I wasn't emotionally developed enough to deal with it at the time, though I don't think I would have handled it any better now as an adult. This particular morning, I was planning on ditching school again. I had gym class that day, which made the decision not to go even easier. I remember eating a bowl of cereal in the kitchen while my dad left for work. My older brothers had already moved out, so the house was pretty empty. My cousin was a nurse, and she would come and check on my mom at lunch every day, so I'd get dressed, eat breakfast, then head out, whether I was going to school or not. I hugged my mom and said goodbye, then off I went. I walked for maybe 10 or 15 minutes when I just stopped dead in my tracks. I can't explain it. It was like a video game when your character hits a loading screen and freezes. I literally couldn't move forward. I stood there for a second and felt this overwhelming urge to go home. So I turned around and walked back to my house. Mom was asleep when I got there, but she woke up as I entered the living room. She didn't ask me why I wasn't in school. She just gave me a smile and told me to come sit next to her. We talked a bit, not about anything important. We watched The Price is Right, trying to play along with the contestants. When my cousin arrived, she was a little confused why I was home. My mom told her I had a half day. I told my mom how much I loved her, gave her a kiss. She said she was proud of me, and I left for school. I actually went, too. My dad took her to a hospital appointment that afternoon that I didn't know about. At one point, she asked him to get her a glass of water, and by the time he came back, she was gone. It hit the whole family pretty hard. We'd been dealing with the cancer for a long time, but it also felt sudden. I don't know what made me stop that morning. I like to think it was God giving me a nudge. That time with my mom, it wasn't any sort of last conversation. We didn't talk about anything important. It was like any other morning, and I wouldn't have wanted it any other way. I still miss my mom every day, but thanks to that glitch, that little miracle, I have that morning to remember. This literally happened just the other day. I finished work and was planning on grabbing fast food on my way home. I texted my girlfriend to see what she wanted, and it became one of those conversations where neither of us had strong urges for anything in particular, but at the same time, nothing the other person suggested sounded good. I stopped at a red light to tell her that I didn't want Del Taco when I noticed a shape out of the corner of my eye approaching my car. I figured it was a homeless person coming to ask for change or try to sell me flowers. When you live in Los Angeles long enough, you build up a natural defense to situations like that. But suddenly I was jolted to attention by a hand pounding on my passenger window. I looked up to see a police officer in full gear standing outside my car, aggressively pointing for me to roll down my window. He had on a helmet and sunglasses, so all I could see was his mustache and mouth. The crazy thing was, I wasn't in the far right lane. This cop walked into the street to reach my car. I rolled down the window and the cop shouted, "Put away your phone right now!" Normally I'm the kind of guy who would have said something back, but I was shocked. It was less like a cop about to write me a ticket and more like my dad yelling at me. I tossed my phone in the passenger seat and rolled up my windows. The whole time I stared forward, embarrassed by getting caught like that. It was only like 5 seconds, but when I finally glanced sideways, the cop was gone. I mean, gone. He vanished. That's when I realized that I hadn't seen any police cruiser or motorcycle. Where had he come from? Where did he go? It was like he appeared out of nowhere and then just vanished. The car behind me hit their horn because the light changed, so I cruised onto the freeway. Normally I would have continued texting my girlfriend or searched my phone for a podcast to play, but the whole situation had me paranoid. I kept wondering if the cop was following me or something. I was on the freeway for maybe 2 minutes when a work truck pulled in front of me. One of those pickups that's full of tools and ladders and whatnot. Immediately after pulling in front of me, the truck blew a tire. It started swerving erratically, and a hammer flew out of the bed coming straight at me, but I turned enough that it didn't hit my windshield. The pickup slowed and made its way to the shoulder. I hit my hazard lights and stayed behind it to keep anyone else from speeding up behind me. When we finally stopped, I checked on the driver of the truck to make sure he was okay. He called people to come help, so I continued on my way home. I couldn't stop thinking about how close to death I came. If I was still texting my girlfriend, that hammer would have come straight through the windshield and at my face. I could have been dead on the freeway because I was arguing burgers versus burritos. That's when I remembered my uncle who worked for the California Highway Patrol when I was a kid. He died in a motorcycle accident the year before I started high school. Could it have been him, warning me to save my life? Like I said, this just happened to me. Whenever I think about it, my hands still shake. Trust me, don't text and drive. Whatever you have to say isn't worth a hammer to the face at 70 miles per hour. Can an animal be a miracle? Let me give you the quick rundown of where I was in my life when this all happened. Spring of 2019, my father died. Lung cancer. He smoked for decades before I was born. Fall of 2020, my mom died. COVID. I'm sure living with a smoker her whole life didn't help. Then in August of 2021, we put my dog to sleep. I'd had her for 7 years, longer than I knew my wife. I cried more than when my parents died. I don't know. With people, you can tell them how much they meant to you before they go. With a dog, well, I hope she knew how much she was loved. About a month after I lost her, a buddy of mine told me a guy he worked with needed someone to take a retired racing greyhound. This guy had taken the dog in, but it wasn't getting along with his other dogs, and he was in desperate need of help. My wife and I agreed to drive over and see the greyhound, but I was extremely reluctant to adopt a new dog. He was curled up in his kennel because the other dogs wouldn't stop barking when he came out. I crouched down to his level and he walked over, pressing the top of his head against my leg. The guy showed me the dog's paperwork and I spotted his date of birth, the same day my dad died. The guy begged me to take him. Staying there wasn't good for Gabriel or his other dogs. Between his begging and the greyhound pushing his head against me, I knew that I'd feel miserable if I left this dog behind. So 10 minutes later, we were driving home with Gabriel curled up in the back seat. He really became my little miracle. Little did I know my marriage was crumbling apart behind my back. That all came out a couple months later. It was a bad breakup to say the least. My ex-wife said some nasty things, I guess to justify why she'd been stepping out on me. She turned a lot of our mutual friends against me too. Through everything, Gabriel was by my side. Anytime I felt utterly depressed, I'd find him pressing the top of his head against me. At times, that feeling was the only thing keeping me from collapsing. Once my divorce was final, I realized there was nothing tying me to where I was living. My parents were my only family there, and both of them were gone. Plus, my ex-wife kept most of our friends in the breakup. Work wasn't bad, but now that I wasn't supporting another person with expensive tastes, I didn't need to make as much money. So I left. I always dreamed of living in Colorado, just finding a place near a small town surrounded by nature. It only took me a week to find a house that perfectly matched what I wanted. When I saw the pictures online, it instantly seemed familiar, like something I'd seen in a dream. That's where I'm writing this now, sitting at my kitchen table, staring out at the woods. Gabriel, my greyhound miracle, is curled up at my feet. I love him more than anything, and I can't help feeling that he was brought into my life by some greater power. There are times when we're laying around that I'll push the top of my head against him to let him know that I feel the same way he does. You know what? I think I'll take him for a walk.